Your top story, Deputy President and presidential hopeful Cyril Ramaphosa has broken a lid on President Jacob Zuma's rape accuser during a radio interview, saying he believes she was sexually assaulted. This has been the first admission by Ramaphosa, making him the first presidential hopeful to be direct in answering this question in the run-up to the elections. President Jacob Zuma was acquitted of the charges and his accuser died last year in Durban. Speaking during the 16 days of activism in the country and just weeks before the much-anticipated ANC elective conference, Ramaphosa said he understands a woman's agony of publicly admitting she had been raped. Responding to whether he believed Khwezi, who for years was known as Khwezi, was raped, Ramaphosa said he believed in the accusation but respected the decision taken by the justice system. Well, joining us on the phone line now is Teddy Bear Clinical Director Shahida Omar. Good morning to you and thank you for joining us here on ANN7. Shahida, just talk us through your initial reaction to this comment or statement made by the Deputy President.
Well, I think it's a too little, too late. Khwezi had to suffer a lot before, this kind of statement has been made public, and the support she received was very little. She was brutalized by the law enforcement agencies, by the criminal justice system, where she was seen to be the perpetrator rather than the victim. So it is too little, too late.
Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa mentions that he believes Khwezi was raped, but he respects the court's judgment in this specific case. That is somewhat of a double standard. What do you make of this comment?
Well, as you've said, it is a double standard because everybody had equal opportunity to stand up, speak out, and stand up for justice, but nothing was said at that time. And silence is acquiescence. So there was a lot of complicity and complacency in standing up for the justice of a victim.
All right, thank you very much, Shahida, for sharing your views with us this morning. We appreciate you talking to us. That was the Teddy Bear Clinical Director, Shahida Omar, stating it's a little bit too late for Cyril Ramaphosa to be coming forward and making such statements. That is her view. But joining us for further comment now is ANC Youth League Secretary General Njabulo Nzuza, also joins us on the phone line. Good morning to you, Secretary General. Thank you for joining us on ANN7. First and foremost, just your reaction to Cyril Ramaphosa's statements or comments during this radio interview.
Well, I must say that we were actually more than disappointed, but we were flabbergasted and were actually disgusted by the statements that were made by Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa yesterday. That was the lowest point he could have ever reached when he succumbs to pressure of interview, to say things that are not substantiated, things that have been cleared by court. To us, it shows a lack of principle. It shows a weak leader whom, when he's pressured, he seems to agree with anyone, just so that he is seen to be of high moral standing in society. It shows a leader willing to do anything and everything to be elected, regardless of whether what that statement he says can actually stand a test of time. We are actually very disappointed and we are actually very disgusted by what he actually said yesterday.
Secretary General, what do you make of the timing of this sort of statement? I mean, we are in the run-up to the ANC presidential election. This is some time after the court made its judgment, some time after these accusations have come to the fore. In fact, it's been years. What do you make of the timing of these comments?
Well, what the Deputy President is trying to do is to boost his campaign in terms of moral standing in society, irregardless of the rule of law. Now, this is something we've been warning about, where leaders who are campaigning go out and paint a very bad image about leaders of the organization in order for them to seek credence and relevance as if they command higher moral standing in society. Yesterday's event was planned, so that Cyril Ramaphosa can be seen as a person who is sympathetic, so that he can boost his campaign. That's what it was all about. It was never about the purported victim who was proven in a court of law never to have been a victim. It was never about being right or standing for the rights of people who are abused. Because what you must understand and know is that it is happening in society where a number of men are acquitted of rape, and some women come out and say, hey, look, that person did not rape me at a later stage. Actually, I was angry with the person. That is why we have these institutions like court to deal with the facts. So what Ramaphosa was doing yesterday was just trying to boost his campaign.
Also, with regards to what the Deputy President is hinting at with regards to South Africa's justice system, just your comments around that, because he says that he respects the court process, but he still doubts the finding that Khwezi was not raped. Reading into this sort of statement, what does that mean with regards to our justice system?
The statement on its own shows a person of double standards. We have said this before, that Ramaphosa is a person of double standards. You can't say on the other hand, you respect the rule of law and courts, and then on the other hand, change and say that decision that was taken in that court actually is not true and it is not a fact, and the court should not have taken that decision. It shows a leader of double standards who is willing to go an extra mile for him to be elected as president of the ANC, forgetting that his actions are actually damaging to the very same organization he wants to lead.
With regards to the selection of the next president of the ANC and the voting and decision-making around that, do you think his statements and comments will have an impact, negatively or positively, on his race to become the next ANC president?
Actually, that's the biggest problem. This thing is not going to make an impact for him. It is just a careless statement that he has made, trying so hard to be relevant, trying so hard to seem as if he's sympathetic to a victim that has been proven by the court of law never to have been a victim. He's actually falling prey to popular support. Decisions on who must lead the ANC are based on principles. And some of those principles are saying, this is the program of radical economic transformation that the ANC seeks to pursue. Then we will look and say who is the best leader to pursue that particular stage of our revolution. We are not going to look in terms of popular statements. This thing will not have an impact, you see. In fact, to me, it has done more damage because it has shown him to be a weak person who subscribes to pressure. When he's pressured, because in that interview, he was pressured and he succumbed to pressure because he believed that the statement he was saying is popular.
All right, thank you very much, Secretary General, for sharing your views and comments with us here on ANN7. That was the ANC Youth League Secretary General Njabula Nzuza joining us on the phone line. We are going to continue to get comment coming through here with regards to Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa's comments around President Jacob Zuma's rape case. We are also joined now by political analyst Professor Sipho Siepe, joins us on the phone line as well. Good morning to you, Professor. First and foremost, your reaction to Cyril Ramaphosa's comments.
Well, I would have wanted to say I'm shocked, but I'm not. This is a vintage Cyril Ramaphosa, a very dishonest person. He has no regard for the law. He has no regard for the courts of this country. And this is a man who is supposed to be a lawyer by training. And you'd have known that once the court has made a finding, what do you do, especially given that you had a judge who was seated there listening to evidence by various witnesses, and Ramaphosa was nowhere near there. Instead, because he is also desperate for attention and for popularity, he succumbed to an intellectual mob. That is what defines Ramaphosa. Secondly, he does not even realize that he actually cast aspersions against the judge who has been honorable in spelling out why he came to a particular judgment. One must also remember that some of the witnesses who were there were pastors who had also claimed that they had also been accused. So every step of the way, if you give Cyril a test, he fails it. For him, anything that advances his uncontrollable desire for power, as long as it advances him, he'll go by the wind. He is the person who has mastered the art of looking at which way the wind is blowing and jumping in. So if anybody had a sense that you are electing a president, this should actually tell you and should actually remove any doubt. And you can go also to the Marikana matter, where he was there unconcerned, having brought white lawyers to defend him. It took him 5 years to remember that he could actually go there to say, I am sorry, I apologize. Even today, he has not done it. But suddenly, he realizes, because of this uncontrolled ambition for power, that he may and should have done so. This is the same person who was able to flaunt his money by buying and purchasing a buffalo for 18 million. And only when there was a chorus of condemnation did he change. So we must actually see this behavior as a trademark of Ramaphosa.
With regards to the timing, Professor, it's been years since that court judgment was handed down. It's been years since these allegations surfaced. Questions arising as to why Cyril Ramaphosa didn't speak out back then, why he's choosing to talk about this now on a very public platform.
This is a man who has no more bone or vein of integrity left in him. He is doing so because there is this possibility and that he might gain support. He is spineless. That's the best way of describing him. And I do think that from the perspective of somebody who's trained as a lawyer, these are the people who would have been disbarred precisely because for him it's always about him. Remember, it was the likes of Julius Malema who also advised us and reminded us that this is a man for whom it's always me and me and me and me. So this behavior comes as no surprise.
All right. Thank you very much, Professor, for your comments, sharing your views with us. We appreciate you talking to us. That was Professor Sipho Siepe, political analyst, joining us on the phone line, just talking to us about Cyril Ramaphosa and the comments he has made on a radio station interview around President Jacob Zuma and his rape case. Deputy President and presidential hopeful Cyril Ramaphosa has broken the lid on President Jacob Zuma's rape accuser during a radio interview, saying he believes that she was sexually assaulted. For further comment now, we are joined by MKMVA NEC spokesperson, Mr. Carl Niehaus. Good morning to you, Mr. Niehaus. Thank you for joining us. Your reaction or comment to Cyril Ramaphosa's statements?
Well, we are really shocked by what Comrade Cyril Ramaphosa did last night. And from the side of Mkonto, he says we're Military Veterans Association, we have 6 questions that we would like to pose to him. The first one is, if Comrade Cyril Ramaphosa believed that Khwezi was raped, how did he then agree to serve as Deputy President under President Jacob Zuma? The second question is, in harboring this belief, what did he do to support Khwezi? The third question is, alternatively, if he did not believe it, but now suddenly says he does just to boost his presidential campaign, isn't this the worst kind of expediency? Is Comrade Cyril Ramaphosa now abusing the soul and memory of Khwezi for the promotion of his presidential ambitions? Is this not the worst kind of immoral expediency? And we have to ask ourselves, has Comrade Cyril Ramaphosa got no backbone at all?
Mr. Niehaus, listening to your 6 questions that you've now put forward and looking at the timing of this statement, I mean, we are a couple of days away from the ANC presidential election conference. Do you or are you of the view that this is an attempt by Cyril Ramaphosa to boost his presidential campaign? I mean, looking at the timing of this?
Well, obviously, it's an attempt by him to boost his campaign. It's an attempt by him to subvert what was a ruling by the court. It is an attempt by him to undermine the acceptance of our country that decisions by the court stands, and it is an attempt by him to now break down the very basic rule of law that you are proven innocent until you are proven guilty. And when a court has passed a judgment, as in this case, that President Jacob Zuma was not guilty, to then proceed to say that you believe that the person is guilty is to act totally against the basic tenets of a constitutional state, to act against the basic tenets of the fact that the court ruling should stand supreme. And we must ask ourselves, is the expediency and the power hunger of Comrade Cyril Ramaphosa such that he himself, who had written this constitution together with the rest of the Constitutional Assembly and actually chaired that Constitutional Assembly, is now prepared to trash the rule of law for the sake of his power hunger to become the next president of the ANC and then probably also the president of South Africa. Yes, it's expedient. Yes, it is timed in order to try and promote himself. Yes, it is against what should any moral person do in circumstances like this.
Mr. Niehaus, do you think that Cyril Ramaphosa's statements will have a negative or a positive effect on the voting process and specifically votes for him as the ANC president? Do you think that he will receive more support from women's rights activists and the Women's League necessarily?
I don't believe so. I believe that Comrade Cyril Ramaphosa's behavior will be seen for the expedient behavior that it is. This is not someone who is concerned about women's rights. This is not someone who is even concerned about the rule of law. This is someone who is only concerned about himself and self-promotion.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Niehaus, for your comments and your views and sharing those with us. That was MKMVA NEC spokesperson, Mr. Carl Niehaus, joining us on the phone line, just giving his reaction to a radio interview that was done by the Deputy President, Cyril Ramaphosa, last night, in which he made comments around President Jacob Zuma's rape case, and he shared some very interesting details of his views and opinions around that. But stay tuned to ANN7 for further discussions around this story.